Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's about time, I think we can get started. If you're just joining us, thank you. If you've been sitting around waiting and hanging out with us, thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. If you are a participant, an audience member, you will be muted during the first part, during the storytelling. Just letting you know. But afterwards, we will have a question and answer. I will attempt to unmute you if you do have a question. There is a chat option that you can use. I hope you can see it on your end. You can keep the camera on, keep the camera off. It's whatever you are comfortable with, but just know we are recording the storytelling part of this presentation. So hello and welcome. I'm Michelle. I also go by Shelly, and I am the Young Adult Outreach and Education Specialist here at NAMI Keystone, PA. If you've never heard of NAMI, we are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we're the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. So what we do is we provide advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that all people affected by mental illness can build better lives. And a great thing about NAMI, or at least I think it's great, I think it's one of the coolest things, is that everyone who either works for NAMI or volunteers there is either has a family member or is affected themselves by mental illness. So we're really in it to win it, like I like to say. So today's webinar is an example of a NAMI in our own voice presentation. If you don't know what that is, it's one of our signature education programs, and I have my speakers with me. I have Barb, Carolyn, I'm so sorry, okay, and Matt, and they will be sharing their stories. So we hope that NAMI in our own voice changes attitudes, assumptions, and stereotypes through these personal stories. So kind of these firsthand stories, they provide a firsthand account of what it's like to live with a mental health diagnosis, also while offering hope and providing insight into the fact that recovery is possible. So mental health conditions in ourselves or in someone we care about can impact roles such as being better siblings, coworkers, neighbors, service providers, parents, spouses, or even friends. And the stories that you're going to hear today will describe how mental health affects people and those specific relationships with others. My speakers will share how mental health has impacted their lives, explore warning signs, and describe what kind of habits and changes support their mental health. At the end, like I said before, there will be a question and answer portion. We're all very open about our journeys. So I really hope that you pay attention and have some amazing questions to ask. I really hope for a great conversation, but I will repeat this at the end, but we are not doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, or anything like that. Anything we say is from our own personal experience. But Barb is gonna go first.
Okay.
I'm going to disappear so you don't get distracted by my face or my cat running around. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And may I present Barb Full.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle or Shelly. Hello. Thank you, NAMI, for this opportunity. I live in York in South Central PA. My husband and I have been married for 32 years, and we have two married sons, ages 28 and 31. One couple is living in Denver, Colorado, and the other couple is living in Wilmington, North Carolina. The gorgeous Rocky Mountains and the beaches of North Carolina are not bad places to visit. My family and close friends have been very supportive of me, and this has been invaluable for my recovery. I remain physically active through a love of bike riding, and my volunteer endeavors in my retirement have given my life purpose. Routine exercising and having goals to work towards have been important keys to good mental health for me. My own acute episodes of anxiety and clinical depression are episodic, and I've had 4 significant ones in my lifetime. My particular anxiety disorder is OCD. And for me personally, that means I have repetitive thought rituals like prayers, which I think is my Catholic upbringing, and just random lists. It is very humbling to admit my symptoms. The first time I experienced this uncontrollable behavior, fear consumed me. I'm certain this phobic type fear comes from when I was growing up. I had an aunt who suffered from untreated schizophrenia. Sadly, there were no beneficial meds back then, and she spent part of her life in Harrisburg State Hospital. As a child, it was traumatic to visit her and perhaps more upsetting to see my own mom cry because of the situation. When I had my first episode, I was sure I was headed down the same path. I soon learned that could not have been further from the truth. My episodes have all been triggered by major events and stressors in my life. My first episode happened right before my wedding, and although I was happy to have found love at age 27, living together and sharing finances was a big change for me. From this episode, I learned that with perseverance, I could get well. The second episode was after I had children and I was juggling a full-time outside sales job with raising my young sons. Struggling to keep it all together finally wore me down. From this episode, I learned my illness could come back. My third episode was in 2007 when I had left my long-time career, so in a sense, I had lost my identity. And at the same time, my mother was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. I was in my late 40s by then, so this episode taught me that I could have many years of wellness in between. Each time I worked very hard with outpatient therapy and meds, and over a course of many months, I got well. My most recent episode, and by far my most serious, was last summer when I got so depressed that I overdosed. I just wanted to take the pain away. This episode resulted in receiving 4 ECT treatments along with 3 different hospitalizations over a 7-week period. My trigger was navigating a new and unusual family situation. For me, although I am aware of the stressful situation, I am not always aware of how I am personally interpreting it, and therefore how deeply it may be affecting my mental health. I've now learned it's very important for me to be proactive and get in front of the illness, to be mindful during times of stress of how I am thinking and feeling. Mindfulness and taking inventory of my emotions is part of DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy. I have learned this goes a long way to help me to only have a few bad days, like the rest of us experience from time to time, instead of a full-blown episode of anxiety and depression. Because of many years of wellness in between major episodes, this is something that is particularly challenging for me because I forget my tools. I focus mostly on the negative parts of the situation, which makes me feel powerless, and tend to forget how I can improve the situation to gain some control, thereby improving my mental health. To use an analogy, last year during my worst episode, the whole house went up in flames, when maybe if I had been more mindful of my thoughts and emotions months before and taken action, only the stove would have caught fire. Only recently am I actively trying to be more vigilant and make a habit of getting up each morning and self-reflecting with my favorite cup of coffee. The first thing I do when I realize I am in a serious episode of anxiety and depression is to get in touch with my longtime psychologist. I have been blessed with, over the years, the help of 2 different men who have absolutely helped to change my life because they taught me the skills of cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. Both taught me tools to deal with my illness that I continue to use to this day. I often say I hear their wise words echo in my mind when I need them the most. My first psychologist would record our sessions so that I could listen to them again later. This was very enlightening for me to actually hear my own distorted words. The next thing I do is go to my psychiatrist to evaluate my medications. There is definitely a chemical component to my illness, and I believe it can also be genetic. My personal belief is though medication is an important frontline tool, CBT has been equally important. I must change my distorted thoughts to feel better. No medication could ever do that for me. Medication lifts the physical fog I feel. The heavy lifting is persevering and applying my CBT skills. Many people talk in generalities about therapy. CBT is the gold standard of treatment for anxiety and depression. So I would like to share the ways CBT has helped me. It has absolutely changed my life. First, the backbone of CBT is to write down your most distressing thoughts, then answer these thoughts in a more logical, rational way. And at the end of my presentation, we do have a visual aid of the common 10 thought distortions. If anybody's not familiar with CBT, we might be able to show them. And I just want to say, I think I've done all 10 distortions. I've been guilty of them. In my humble opinion, writing down the distressing automatic thoughts is the easy part. The hard part is the work, day in and day out, of making a conscious effort to change those thoughts. My default thought patterns, especially when depressed, are very negative, and I have worked hard to change them. I am a work in progress. At times, I even write my new rational responses on index cards and keep them in my purse, in my car, and on my nightstand. These are called coping cards, and I find them very helpful. Change is difficult because it takes commitment and perseverance, and I cannot stress how important CBT was to my recovery from each of my major bouts of depression. My personal experience is that it has helped me to see the errors in my distorted thinking. And this just isn't positivity. This is opening my mind to see the entire picture and consider all things at play with my illness, as well as with life's difficult situations. Second, one of the most powerful things I have learned is total acceptance of my chronic illness with all its painful symptoms. Acceptance doesn't mean liking your illness, but rather saying to yourself, I have this illness, but I also know the skills to help me manage it. And to drill down even further, one of the tools that most helps me with acceptance is to be able to separate myself from my illness. I tell myself that my distressing obsessions are just symptoms. They are not who I am. They are only a manifestation of my illness. For me, there is much healing power in this mindset. Thirdly, a negative mindset that also fuels my depression is self-shame due to having my OCD symptoms. Through years of treatment, I now more easily accept myself and my illness, for this is the way God made me. The shame I felt about myself because of my mental illness made it worse for me. Why feel shame when there is part of this illness that I have no control over? I was born with these genetics. The more important thing is, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to help myself? To directly combat my anxiety and fear about OCD, I tell myself that my obsessions can never hurt me. What hurts me is my thoughts about those obsessions, and I know I can change my thoughts. Once I am aware and working on my thought distortions, my OCD rituals gradually subside. It's kind of like magic. And finally, a big thing I had to learn was to have patience with myself. I tell myself I am not a light switch that can be turned on and off automatically. I know that I will have good days and bad days, and that changing your thoughts takes time. My doctor would tell me, you know it in your head now, but you also need to feel it with your entire being. And this takes time. In conclusion, my ability to recover has become my greatest strength because I know recovery is hard work, and I've always done the hard work, and I take pride in that. Mental illness is especially challenging because it's not only day to day, but also sometimes minute by minute, because negative thoughts are powerful and consuming. I realize now that thoughts are fluid and constantly changing. Mostly, I understand that hopelessness is just a symptom of my illness, and it's not reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barb. I love the idea that we're not light switches, and that's something that I was talking about in my own therapy session today. That sometimes it's frustrating when we can't just flip our anxiety off or flip our depression off or something like that. So I really, really, wow, words just disappeared for me. I really appreciated that, and thank you so much for sharing your story. It was wonderful as always. And
thank you. I just want to say, Michelle, one thing my doctor would tell me, because I would get so frustrated that I wasn't feeling better in, a short period of time. And he'd say, Barb, if you could feel 5% better tomorrow or 3% better, would that be better for you? And I'm like, I'm so desperate. Yes, I would feel better. It's like, you've got to think of it like that.
Yeah.
Like tiny increments, you will get there.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. Matt, if you're still with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So everyone, this is Matt, and he's going to share his story.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, I do intend to read from a script tonight because this story takes many unexpected twists and turns, and honestly, having it written down is the best way I can keep everything together. Oh yeah, and this isn't just any story. This is the story of my life. So when I was a teenager and a high school senior, I found myself in downtown Oakland on the Pitt campus at a building known as Webster Hall. I can't quite recall the floor I took the elevator to, but I do remember it being pretty high up from the streets below. I was there for an appointment with a psychologist. His first question to me was, "What are you thinking about right now?" Without missing a beat, my response was, "I'm thinking about jumping out of your window right now." You might be thinking, wait, what did I just say? Yes, I had been accepted to my dream college. I was dating my dream girl, and my team and I were having the dream high school soccer season, and I was thinking about killing myself. This symptom is known in the field as suicidal ideation, and it has shown its ugly face in my life more times than I can count. So why was I feeling this way? Was it because I had not even started college yet, and I was already having second thoughts about my career path? Was it the fact that religion was a huge part of my life, but I always felt like I had more questions than I did answers? And then, why exactly was it that other than my mom, the only person I could comfortably talk to about these things was my AP English teacher? So fast forward about 18 months to the second semester of my freshman year of college, through many ups and downs, highs and lows, and seemingly failed solution after failed solution to my mental health concerns. From a therapist who wanted to analyze my dreams, to a 4-month wait to see a mental health specialist at the university I attended, I had given up hope. I had no other choice, or so I thought, so I tried to take my own life. Fast forward about a week, and I was released from the psychiatric unit at the Old St. Francis Hospital. I was officially given the label bipolar, and I was sent on my way with yet another attempt at medications to control my otherwise uncontrollable thought process. I had to drop out of college that semester, but fortunately found myself back at school that fall. I caught up with my schooling over a summer semester, and I ended up graduating college on time. I met my future wife at school, and we moved out of state to start our teaching careers. I would not talk to another mental health professional for roughly 9 years. I was doing what I needed to do to take care of myself. My primary care doctor was managing my medications for me, and it had simply become part of the norm for me, part of a daily routine. I would take a handful of different pills when I woke up daily and another assortment of pills at bedtime. While I early on referred to those meds as my happy pills, I have since come to understand how they are no different than my albuterol inhaler. I've had asthma most of my life and nearly always have an inhaler on me or nearby. There is a medication that can help me with my mental health. Why would I ever think to deprive myself of such a solution? Well, back to the story. Unfortunately, things eventually caught up with me. And between 2012 and 2019, I found myself in a psychiatric unit on at least 5 different occasions, although I may have lost count. I had been on and off more and more meds and seen a number of different psychologists and psychiatrists during this time frame. But these times were different, though. Going to the hospital for a week certainly uproots the family for several days, but it was what I needed each time. And it was completely my decision, as all of these visits were voluntary, unlike the trip to the psychiatric ward after I had attempted death by suicide. So here I am today. I'm more confident than ever in my life. I'm more willing to talk about my struggles than ever. I'm more sure than ever that because of what I've experienced in my life, I will do my part to end the stigma that surrounds mental illness in this world. So I'm not saying I have all the solutions, but these 3 things I know for sure. Number 1, just because you are feeling well does not mean you can skip doses of 1 or more medications. Bipolar disorder and also obsessive compulsive disorder, which I have also been diagnosed with, are known as chronic conditions. This means that I will live with these conditions until the day that I die. When I feel on top of the world, which is where I've found myself for some time now, it's not simply time to stop taking my meds because I'm feeling better. I am feeling better because I am taking my meds consistently. The second thing is being open and willing to talk about your thoughts is very important. I talk with my psychologist about once a month right now. It's not just talking that is important, but listening as well. If you're seeing a doctor and they just let you pour out your thoughts while giving very little insight on their end, this is a one-sided relationship. I was once in one and I quickly got out. I don't necessarily like hearing everything my current psychologist tells me on a monthly basis. However, I hear him out because he is an expert in the field. As much as I sometimes think no one could possibly have some of the same thoughts that go on inside my head, this guy is likely talking to others similar to me on a weekly and likely even daily basis. My problems are not unique. They are just somewhat taboo. Things that go on inside my brain are often utterly unthinkable and unimaginable, and definitely not something I will discuss in front of more than a small select group of people. And the third thing I know for sure is you need to have people in your corner. At this point in my life, I'm 40 years old, and I really don't need the attention I once craved. I actually consider myself an introverted person and typically prefer to be by myself or with a small group of close friends, as opposed to being at a large gathering. My priorities have certainly changed, as most people's do throughout their lifetime. But by people in your corner, I mean people you really trust and aren't afraid to talk about this stuff with. Hey, if they judge you, then they aren't truly your friend anyway. So where do I go from here? The truth is, I don't know, and that is okay by me. I live by a daily mantra that my therapist once shared with me, and that is, every day is a battle. Some days I might win the battle. Some days I might be waving the white flag. But sometimes just making it from one day to the next is all I need. Now, obviously, there are some things I left out of my story. So why between the years of 2012 and 2019 was I hospitalized so frequently? Well, it was probably because I had what I would consider one of the most stressful jobs in the world. I was a school principal who strived for perfection. Some nights I would leave my building at 2 a.m., get home and sleep for 3 hours on the couch, and then do it all again the next day. Yes, I was making a 6-figure salary, but it truly was not worth the money. I walked away from the job after 5 years because it was, in essence, killing me. My stress level was so high, my weight was the highest it had ever been in my life, and if I didn't take my own life, my lifestyle would catch up with me soon and take my life naturally instead. So after 5 years in the position, I simply handed in my resignation letter and walked away from an employer of 9 years. I was so burnt out that I left education altogether with no real plan in mind, and I ended up in the financial sector, only to realize fairly quickly that I did not have a passion for the work I was doing, but instead just doing it for a paycheck. I share this with you because you live and you learn, and you need to make the most of that learning. Technically, in my mind, these last 21 years of my life have been somewhat of a bonus round. I still believe that a higher power saved my life that spring day back in the year 2000 so that I could eventually share my story as I am doing right here, right now. I started writing a book about 8 years ago and more recently started writing a blog. I'm not sure if the book will ever get finished, although I have done some edits over the last couple of weeks, but if it never hits the shelves of Barnes & Noble, that's okay too. As for the blog, it is raw from the deep pockets of my unquiet mind, and some folks are scared by that. I don't write for anyone else's sake but my own. It's been some time since I have written an entry, but when I do, it's how I get the thoughts out of my head. I am so thankful that I came across NAMI several years ago through a combination of factors. I'm also a firm believer that everything in my life has happened for a reason and feel that the ability to give this presentation is just one more reason my life was spared. This is hopefully just one of many talks I will give because I believe my story is meant to carry on a much needed conversation around the topic of mental illness and end a stigma that has lasted for way too long. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Matt. For those who don't know, Matt also is a teacher, and he has shared his story with his students and his school, and it's just been so amazing to see how many lives he's changed. And I'm also so surprised about how many of us are writers. Every time everyone will see next, Carolyn's written a book, so we're a creative bunch, and I love that so much. So thank you so much, Matt, for sharing your story.
You bet. Thanks.
Yep. And up next, everyone, we have Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn Scaurin, and I am 24 years old. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I graduated from Chatham University in 2020. I'm highly passionate about mental health and the stigma that surrounds it, mainly because of a lot of my own experiences. As happy as I am now, and as lovely as I try to see life as it is, I was in the darkness for a long, long time. I felt every day was a battle, and I felt like I was worthless. Starting in 3rd grade, I had already felt like I wasn't enough. A kid in my class decided to make a note saying, "Kill Carolyn." My confidence was non-existent at such a young age, and so I went down a dark and lonely path. As I got older, I constantly felt more and more like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't worthy, like I didn't belong. Then when I got into middle school, I continued to get terribly bullied, and I got called Marvin the Martian. They drew a picture of me with a huge nose, frizzy hair, and yellow teeth. And it made me feel so insecure about myself. I had no ounce of confidence, especially in my nose. It is still something I struggle with to this day, but it is something that I'm grateful I never changed. As the bullying got worse and I continued down a depressive path, going into high school, I felt like a nobody. I came from a small, private Catholic middle school, and all of a sudden, I was thrown into a huge group of people where everyone had already had their group of friends. Every day going to school was a battle. Every day I just saw darkness. Every day I wanted to be done with it all. The truth was I just needed help, but I didn't see it yet. High school was truly when my mental health started to deteriorate. I became completely insecure and I hated myself. And I do mean hate myself. I felt as every day was just another battle I had to get through. I was denying that I needed help because I didn't want to admit it to myself. And I didn't want to admit it to my family either because I never wanted them to feel sorry for me or upset because it wasn't their fault. So because I wasn't accepting that I needed help, I was getting nothing out of therapy. I would go to therapy, but I would get nothing out of it because I wasn't buying in. I had no idea what people meant when they said you need to buy in before. But then I did, because eventually I understood that you have to take the initiative, as I did, to want to get better, to try to get better. Unfortunately, high school and college were a time where I still didn't admit that I needed help. I would still continue down a dark and lonely path. And as hard as this is to even talk about today, high school was when I began to self-harm. And I only continued to get more self-destructive as I got into college. And the older I got, the less worth I felt in myself. I felt worthless. I felt ugly. I felt unlovable. And I felt like no one would care if I was alive, because yet again, I wasn't fitting in. Because of this destructive mindset, I would do anything for approval just so I could feel enough. I strived so hard for validation that I would compromise my own beliefs and morals just to get the attention and to feel a tiny bit enough. But I hated myself so much that my freshman year of college, I almost tried to take my own life. I was so miserable and I was so lonely. One night I thought I should just end it all because I just felt so broken and afraid that it would just never get better. And at that point, I didn't see any way out. I thought that that would solve my problems, but the truth is it was, and it never will be, the answer. I didn't see my life as worth living, so much so that one night I truly did try to almost take my life. However, my saving grace, my best friend, my absolute angel, best friend in the world, called me at the right moment. And she saved me from doing something I would have regretted and something I would not have been able to take back. My freshman year was rough from the beginning because even though I was at school and I was hating it, I also knew I wanted to transfer within the first few weeks. Of course, my family tried to do what they could, but because I was so broken and dead inside, it was hard for them to help because being in that mentally depressive and suicidal state, I couldn't see the other side. When I look back now, I can't even imagine what I would have done to my family. I can't even imagine what I would have done to everyone left behind. I honestly thought that at this point, getting therapy and doing what the therapist would tell me to do was what I needed to do. Though it took some years and I needed to change something within my own thought process and trying numerous different psychologists and psychiatrists, I started to see that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I tried to then put my best foot forward because I learned about intensive outpatient therapy, which was something I went to in college. And as much as I hated it, it did help me learn many coping skills that I still use today to help keep me mindful and to help keep me always thinking about life in a positive way. Now, my senior year of college was a time where I was doing a lot better. I had one more episode this year, and my amazing sister flew home that night and stayed with me. And she was the one who actually said to me, "What life do you want for yourself?" After she said that, it clicked. I had to buy in because at this point, I couldn't do it anymore. But while I was understanding that I needed to take therapy more seriously, I started to realize how important life is. I started to see that things could get better if I just held on. I saw how important and how precious life is and how quickly it can be taken in a second. And a few weeks before my graduation, at the very end of my college years, I almost had my life taken without my choice. March 15th of 2020 was the day of quarantine and the day that my life changed forever. That night, as I was in the back seat of a car and we were driving straight down the street, I saw I was about to die and I had no choice but to hold on. All of a sudden, I looked straight ahead and there was a car flying at me from the other side. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to talk about. I saw the car just running through these stop signs and knew that we were about to get hit and there was nothing I could do. Now, at this point, I didn't understand that I didn't have my seatbelt on at the moment because I was in the back middle. Luckily, by the grace of God and a miracle, I somehow grabbed my seatbelt seconds before the crash. That was a huge eye-opening moment for me because the fact that the car got hit the way it did and the fact that I grabbed my seatbelt seconds before is a miracle because that was the night where my life changed forever. After that, mental health became something that I looked at completely differently. All of a sudden, I wanted to use my voice Before the car accident, I was getting better and I was getting more vulnerable, but I definitely wasn't as open and as much as I wanted to show people who I really was. I tried to keep that more to myself. So I definitely was shyer until the accident. But after the car accident, I wanted to help people and help people understand life is worth living, because I knew that that was my second chance that God had given me. And so that inspired me to stand up and use my voice once and for all. It was my second chance to do good and to help others. So a few months after the car accident, I was trying to figure out how I could use my voice, how I could do good. And that's how I heard about NAMI. Now, on the other hand, this is completely separate and is not affiliated with NAMI, but I helped myself by writing a book. And not only writing a book, but I actually published my first book in April of 2021. Having my book helped me heal in a way that I never thought was even possible. It made me realize that I didn't need to worry about what anyone thought anymore, and I needed to worry about what was best for me. All I cared about was helping one person, and that one person surely was myself. I helped myself in more ways than I could have ever seen. But now I want to help as many people as possible realize that life is worth living, and there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. My book is only a small part of who I am, but I want to use this book as a resource, as a tool, so that people can understand that just because you might be in a rough spot in life right now doesn't mean it is worth it to give up. Life is too short and too precious. I honestly have never felt more myself than when I wrote this book. It was the most healthy coping mechanism I ever could have found, because writing for me, I didn't know it in college because I didn't like writing papers. But after college, I realized writing was something I was good at, and it was something I needed to continue doing. And so on the other hand, music has also been a healthy coping mechanism for me. Now, my book is called Unbreakable, but something my sister and I share together, which I'm so grateful for, is music. She and I ended up writing this song called Unbreakable together, which is something that I only did because of her. There's a line in this song actually where it says, "Nothing's gonna tear me down." And she and I talked about wanting that to be in the chorus because I've learned, and she's helped me learn, that the opinion of others, that what other people think, should have no way of what I want for myself. My sister is super strong, and I've always admired how she never lets anything get her down. So with this song and my story, I want to inspire others and help others realize that they can be okay. They can get to the other side. We all should be able to use our voices and not feel shame. My book Unbreakable is now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in case you are interested. The song as well is also on Spotify, which is really special to me and my sister. It's a really cool feeling. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for your time, and remember that you are all unbreakable.